repetition. Let's try another pair. These are kind of like funky. These are no good. These are. Is that set up? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sutarasata Shri Śrimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Savior of the whole world is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Nityalila Vishnu Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sutarasata Shri Śrimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Continued reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Chapter titled A Visit to Boston. Still in the visit to Boston. In the previous reading, Prabhupada noticed that sign under the bridge that said unalloyed steel. They have unalloyed steel and we have unalloyed devotional service. With Prabhupada's permission, this is after Prabhupada told him to sell the bus. With Prabhupada's permission, the devotees scheduled him for the all-night Uncle J show, a talk show on radio station WMEX. At 11 p.m., 3 devotees, Hamsarūpa and Pradyumna in suits and ties, and Jadharani in a sari, went on the air. Prabhupada was scheduled to join them at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. I guess that's why they call it an all-night talk show. These were very popular back in the day, because many people would stay up all night doing nonsense and then listen to these things. I have before me in the studio tonight, Uncle Jay began, 2 nice young men and a young woman who have normal American names like Steve, Paula, and Judy. And when you hear them speak, they sound like normal Americans. But if you could see them, they look a little unusual. Down the front of their noses, they have some white paint. Uncle Jay's listeners began calling in questions, and although most of the questions were trivial, the devotees got many good opportunities to talk about Krishna consciousness. The devotees also used to seed the audience. In many recordings, you'll hear devotees calling in, pretending to be guests, and posing questions that they wanted to invoke a particular response. Finally, around 3 a.m., Srila Prabhupada arrived. He had risen according to his usual schedule and had come directly to the station. Impressed by Prabhupada, Uncle Jay received him politely and had him sit down and begin answering questions. Question 1. I heard a Swami can't pass over water, so how did you get to the USA? Prabhupada, no, why not? That is superstition. Lord Chaitanya said to spread this philosophy all over the world in every town and village. So he certainly knew I would have to cross over the water. Lord Chaitanya knew that Prabhupada would have to cross over the water. Question 2, how did you become a Swami? Prabhupada, everyone is expected to become a Swami. Suppose one lives 100 years. The 4th state is to renounce and completely be engaged in controlling the senses. So it takes 75 years to become a Swami. 75 years. Question 3, did you give up your wife? Srila Prabhupada, woman is not given up. She is always dependent on her father as a young girl, and then on her husband, then on her children, older sons. I was in India recently and my son saw me, but my wife could not see me. Question 4, in this country we would call that desertion. Srila Prabhupada, no, it is a question of progress. There is no divorce. She is a devotee of another Swami. The wife generally is not allowed to be the student of her husband who has become a Swami. Question 5, do you believe the soul is immortal? Srila Prabhupada, yes, you know the soul is immortal. Immortality is not a question of belief, it is a fact. You know what you were in your childhood and in your youth. Question 6, what does it mean in the Bible? The soul that sinneth also dieth. Uncle Jay interrupted and said that since this was a question about the Bible, the caller should ask his priest and not trouble the Swami. But Prabhupada interrupted. No, we can answer this. He who identifies with the body commits practical suicide. He forgets himself. Those who are sinful forget their spiritual identity and they have to take another body. Question 7. What impelled you to take sannyas? Prabhupada, routine work. One has to become a Swami. It is not a hobby. Because they don't take sannyas, they suffer. Question 8. You say meditation is very difficult. How does chanting make it easier? Srila Prabhupada, at the present moment, meditation in its pure form is not possible. To do it properly, one has to control the senses, follow the rules, practice the sitting posture, thinking, feeling, become absorbed in thought. But chanting, as soon as you hear Krishna, immediately the mind is attracted. There is no necessity of pre-qualification. Anyone in any country can sit down and chant Hare Krishna, and he will find himself in complete meditation. Uncle J. So Maharishi's transcendental meditation is nothing new? Prabhupada, no. He says to go and enjoy and simply pay him $35. But you have to control your senses, or how can you meditate? Because you do not want to practice, you do not want to follow. I was surprised that people in America and Western Europe took these cheap things. You don't want the real thing. These yogis never restrict their students. If they restrict their students, the students do not come and pay the fees. Uncle J. When I was small, I read a book about swamis who slept on beds of nails. Are you that kind of swami? Srila Prabhupada, that is just a trick. That is not perfection. Uncle J. Do you mean when you say swami means control of the senses, that if I cut you, you won't feel pain? Srila Prabhupada, that is not perfection. If you take even chloroform, then you will not feel pain, as in a surgical operation. Very good response, right? Control of the senses means that I can be in the midst of beautiful women, but I feel no desire for sex. I've got sufficient strength, but I have no desire for this. That is real control of the senses. And so it went until 5 in the morning. On the way home, Srila Prabhupada rode in the front seat of the taxi beside the driver. Understanding he had an unusual passenger, the driver who had been listening to the Uncle J show asked Prabhupada, are you similar to that transcendental meditation Swami? Prabhupada said, we are similar in that he is a Hindu sage and we are a Hindu sage. But his method, meditation, is actually a very difficult process. But ours is very easy. Chanting. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from chapter 4, canto 4, chapter 8, texts. What's the text? (14 and 15), 14 through 15, 14 through 16. Okay. And what do we have up on the, we have text 16 up there. But text 15, so text 16 has the purport? Okay, very good. So I'll chant text 14 and 15, and then we'll chant text 16 together. Is that okay? Matu sapat maitreya uvacha maktuk sapatnya sidurukti vidha swasan rusa dandahato yatahi hitva mistantang pitarang sanavachang jagama matu prarudan sakasham. The sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. Text 15. Tam nikshasvantam spuradat rostang sunite utsanga uduya balam nishamyatat paura mukha nitantang savivyateyad gaditang sapatya. Translation. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents, who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. Text 16. Srotrijya daryam vilapa shoka Sotrijya daryam vilapa vilalapa shoka Dava jina davalateva bala Davagnina davalateva bala Makyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha parspakalang uvaha. Okay, we'll chant that a little bit. So Trijyadaryang vilalapaloska Davagnina davalateva bala Vakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamuva Srochididayang vilalapa shoka Davagnina davalateva bala Vakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha Srochididayang vilalapa shoka Davagnina davalateva bala Vakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha Davagnina davalateva bala Vakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha Sochidyaryang vilalapa soha Davagnina davalateva bala Vakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha Sotrijyadayang vilalapa shoka Davagnina davalateva bala Makyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha Sotrijyadayang vilalapa shoka Davagnina davalateva bala Bhakyang sapatnya smarati saroja Shriya jasha baspa kalamavaha. Who else? He's the last one? Yeah? Our shab, you already chanted? So, Tsiddhidayang Sulapa. Navagnina Davalate Babala. Vakyam Sapatnya Smarati Saroja. Suya Jusha Baspa Kalam Uvaha. Okay, who else? Jajayam Bilala Pashoka. Navagnina Davalate Babala. Bhakyam Sapatnya Smarati Saroja. Suyajasha Baspa Kalam Vaha. Sa She Utsrijya giving up. Daryam patience. Vilalapa lamented. Shokadava Agnina by the fire of grief. Davalita Iva like burnt leaves. Bala the woman. Vakyam words. Sapatnya spoken by her co-wife. Smarati remember. Saroja Shriya a face as beautiful as a lotus. Drisha by looking. Baspakalam weeping. Uvaha said. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in her grief she became just like a burnt leaf, and so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright, lotus-like face filled with tears, and thus she spoke. Please repeat. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire. And in her grief, she became just like a burnt leaf. And so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright lotus-like face filled with tears. And thus she spoke. Purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When a man is aggrieved, he feels exactly like a burnt leaf in a forest fire. Suniti's position was like that. Although her face was as beautiful as a lotus flower, it dried up because of the burning fire caused by the harsh words of her co-wife. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksu Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karochi Vachalam Bangum Lankai Dekarim Yat Kripatamaham Bade Shri Gurum Diratanam. So read the translations again. Text 14. The sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. So this is, everyone knows the analogy that's common in, the Prabhupada's purports about the snake, how a snake, a real snake without legs, can be charmed using some herbs or some mantra. But the two-legged snake, the man with the snake-like mentality, or the serpent-like mentality, he cannot be rectified. See, this is, except perhaps by devotional service. But other than that, he is considered to be more dangerous than a snake that envy, which is produces that analogy, because this is the whole point, that struck by a foot or a stick, the snake becomes immediately aggressive. Immediately aggressive. So therefore he has that reputation, that the snake is intolerant and strikes without provocation even. Even if you don't hit him with the stick, simply walking by, he will strike. Yeah, so this is the nature of envious people, that they will strike even without provocation because they need to justify their problematic consciousness. And so in this way, sometimes it may so occur that one is affected by such a person. But he should, as it's described later, he should be undisturbed, even in the face of such provocation. This is the definition of dhira. Undisturbed even in the face of such provocation. Or as Prabhupada was describing to Uncle Jay, that a Swami that is not someone who lies on a bed of nails, but is someone who can control the senses. So that even in the midst of beautiful woman, like Haridas Thakur, he's not affected. So this is simple analogy. And of course, what does a young boy do? He goes to his mother. So because the mother is the source of solace, she will give shelter. So this is, of course, we don't have this option as brahmacharis. We don't run to our mothers if there's some pinch of our false ego. We have to, but some people have that tendency that if there's an issue, they will go complain rather than try to be introspective and try to understand what is the cause of my reaction. Why am I upset by this? They will immediately just try to say, oh, this person, he defamed me, or he said bad words about me. In America, the first thing you learn when you're a kid, first thing your mother tells you, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never harm you. Yeah? First lesson. I remember my dear mother saying this to me, because the tendency is that we all have that, when you hear what they call fighting words, this used to actually be a condition for excusal if there was a fight, that this person challenged me with fighting words. I'm sure in India they also have. And we know that Dhritarashtra was also so afflicted like that. Not by fighting words, but by embarrassment. Not Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana. When because of the Mayadanava's expert architectural expertise, he created this illusion that where solid water appeared to be solid ground. And so when Duryodhana fell into that pool, everyone laughed at him. And that laughter was like sharp arrows for such a person. He could not forgive or forget. So this is another instance of false ego, envy or jealousy. And he harbored that, and that's one of the seeds of the fratricidal war of Kurukshetra. Because he was embarrassed. So sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never harm you. So, very good lesson to learn. Oftentimes on Sankirtan, we would be confronted by people who are screaming and yelling in such a insane manner. But you just had to ignore, and you had to just tolerate. You couldn't react. We were learning how to control our senses. And, as long as nobody was touching us, then there was no cause for reaction, But here, because this young boy is a Kshatriya, like Duryodhana, he is deeply affected by the words of his stepmother. Deeply affected. But this is all works out in the end. So text 15. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. So that was that point. And now we're at text 16 again. So his pain became transferred to his mother. The mother is empathy personified. What does she say? Oh, my poor son. Right? Everyone has experiences. Oh, my poor son. You were being bullied, or these people were being mean to you. So she immediately wants to sympathize. This is the position of the mother. So, of course, it's no different here. 5,000 years ago, 5 million years ago, it's all the same. And, of course, the mother shares the burden of this anger and grief, because Prabhupada said that, of course, these are Kshatriyas. Prabhupada said for a Brahmin to fall down to anger is worse than for him to fall down to sex life. So why is that? Why is it worse for a Brahmin to fall down to anger than to fall down to sex life? Well, we see what happened to Duryodhana, caused the whole war. Because you lose your intelligence. Kama esha, krodha esha, raja guna samudabha. You fall down. From lust comes down. Ultimately, loss of intelligence results. So when loss of intelligence, one becomes totally unpredictable, can no longer control himself. All right? People kill each other, kill themselves, kill their wives, kill their children, and then kill themselves due to anger. But sex life, because it's a pillar of sinful life, it erodes the ability to maintain steadiness in devotional service, right? If you have a building and you have 4 pillars and you knock one out, what's going to happen? The building's going to fall down. Any one of these pillars of sinful life can cause your fall down. All right, but falling down to sex life can be rectified. All right, this is, and the Hari Bhakti Vilas has described that this is a weakness of heart. It's not that it's excusable necessarily. Apichet sudarachara. We understand. But if a person puts himself back on the platform of pure devotional service and promises that from this day forward I am yours, the Lord will forgive him. All right? He will protect him. He will preserve him. Yoga kshema vahamyam. Krishna promised. But you cannot repeat this. You cannot repeat this. Otherwise, then you're making a mockery, of Krishna's grace. So how is he going to take that? All right? If someone forgives you, and then you go back and you do the same thing, how would you feel? All right? You think that this person is not a genuine recipient of my forgiveness. All right? My friend Hamsarūpa used to have a term for such persons. He would call them jokers. Because that's what jokers are. They're always just trying to make an excuse, to laugh. What is that in the funny thing in the Bhāgavatam? That there's that certain term, and I forget, when a person is showing his teeth and laughing, and it's considered an insult. Right? So what is that, Abai, Yeah, something like that. I can't remember exactly myself, but Abai would know. And so then, as a result, during the course of these engagements, they get their teeth knocked out just to teach them a lesson. So you can't. Great insult. There's so many little things like this. Cultural idiosyncrasies, just like, cutting off someone's hair half and cutting off someone's beard half. So that's also like killing them in one sense. For a Kshatriya, that's a great losing face. This is almost a, because when someone says he lost face, what does that mean? In Asia, the worst thing you can do to someone is to embarrass them, especially in public, to make them lose face. So what does that mean? He lost his face, he dropped it on the side of the road? What is it? How did he lose his face? So in this sense, it's graphically described that when Rukmi got that treatment, right, that this is worse than death for a Kshatriya, because she's embarrassed by it. So yeah, that's losing face. To create such a situation that a person is embarrassed, all right, it goes directly to the core of one's emotions and creates such a reaction like we see Dhruva Maharaj will have in the future passages here. So in order to avoid all this, of course, this is the lesson here. When this happened to Vidura, and he was embarrassed in the palace of his half-brother, he didn't become enraged. He just realized, like Chanakya Pandit advises, that if one cannot get wealth, fame, respect, knowledge, then he should leave that place. So immediately he retired. He said, oh, okay. He took this as an omen and as an excuse. Like Prabhupada, with Uncle Jay, he didn't desert his wife, right? But at the same time, Prabhupada understood that staying any longer would be, how can you say, an acknowledgement of his inability to take the order of his spiritual master and execute it to the fullest extent. Right? What is that definition of enthusiasm? Endeavor executed with intelligence. So it's not just jumping up and down. That's also enthusiasm. Prabhupada said, even if you don't want to dance, dance and the bliss will come. Dance and the enthusiasm will come. But in this case, Prabhupada took the opportunity with his wife, and it's interesting how he presented that. And basically, it was just like a commercial, like tea or me. You have to make a decision to his wife. And she was joking, but he took it just like Vidura took it. He said, this is the opportunity. Krishna has made this arrangement. That my wife is no longer respecting me. My family's no longer respecting me. Because he was in a very compromised situation. His business was failing, already failed. He had lost his servants. In India, when you lose your servants, that's a very weakened position. Because in India, everybody does everything by servants. All right, so this is a very sad situation. So because of his lack of wealth, he was being disrespected by all his family members. Very compromised situation. So that was the last straw. That because of their situation and due to a lack of funds, that she was trading his Bhagavatams for tea to settle the bill. It's not that one Bhagavatam equals 1 cup of tea. You run up a bill. At the end of the month, the chaiwala comes and says, time to pay up. So, in one sense, she was the first book distributor. She settled the tea bill for a Bhagavatam, which is not much different. Buddhi Mata distributed the first big Krishna book by settling the bill of the gas station at the petrol pump in California. So there's some interesting juxtaposition there. But Prabhupada took it that this is the sign. It's time to leave the palace. And so here we are, so many years later. These are not happenstance. Everything is meant to be exactly as it occurred. Just like Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya knew I had to cross the ocean. He knew it. It was such a great deal when Maharaj Jai Singh went to London, because the injunction was that he had to take everything with him, essentially. So he brought huge silver pots. You can still see them in the city palace in Jaipur. Solid silver urns. These things are as tall as a man, 4 feet wide. They hold thousands of gallons of water. Each one was filled with Ganges water. Because where do you get Ganges water in Jaipur? Anybody know? It's in the mountains, in the desert. Where do you get Ganges water? From Galtaji, where Baladev Vijayabhusan heard the Gita Bhasya from none other than Govinda Dev himself. So at Galtaji, there's a Gomukh at the top of the cliff, at the edge of the hermitage, where all the sages used to assemble, including Baladev Vijayabhusan. And this Gomukh gushes water. Nobody can understand. How is this? In the desert, at the top of the highest point of the mountains in Jaipur, the Aravalli, Ganges water flows freely. So he had these big urns, and he loaded them on a ship. And that was his drinking water, his bathing water, it was everything water. And so in this way, he crossed the Black Sea, the Black Ocean. And he still maintained his caste. You have to maintain your caste. If you cross the ocean, you lose your caste. So he, using intelligence, he did it. Nobody could complain. He consulted the Brahmins, and they said, yeah, you can do this. Nobody can argue. Nobody can criticize. So endeavor, executed with intelligence. So these things are all there. So we don't want to make any endeavor without intelligence, and that's why to fall down to sex life is not as bad as falling down to anger for a Brahmin. But we don't take these things the way some other person would take them, because we have the context to understand what happens when you fall down to anger. And we see many times people create great offenses. Harsh words spoken untimely, they can never be retracted. All right? Everything can be destroyed by those harsh words. One's whole life, whole dynasty, everything. Right? The devastation of the Kuru and the Pan, they were fighting over words, basically. At least that's how it comes about. So we have to be careful. We have to choose our words very carefully. We have to act in such a way, that we're protected by our sincere attempt to execute devotional service. So this is, otherwise you have to have confidence. Utsahan, nishchayat, daryat. There's nischa, compared to patience, is also, how can one be patient if he has no confidence? And how can he be faithful if he has no patience or confidence? So all these things taken together allow one to execute devotional service, in a straightforward and honest capacity. You can't have any duplicity. You can't have any ulterior motive. And we see here, of course, it's not that Dhruva has formulated some ulterior motive, but still he's eager to get the kingdom greater than his grandfather. So when he first goes there, he has an ulterior motive to see Vishnu. He's not going to see Vishnu just to fall down and prostrate himself and say, please engage me in your service. Chatur vidabhadante mam. So he's going there with some motive, out of distress. And so we see that, but however you come, and it's the same, and that's the perfect example. He went there out of distress, but he got the benefit. All right? The realization, because you can't. How can you? Bhakti is not something which is imposed. It is existing. And Majji Lila decides that, and of course, I'd have to turn to Ram Roy to get the exact words. Sadhu Kabunoi. There's Sudha Chitte, Karya Udoy. That this is there in the heart. And it becomes revealed when one is purified. And that Chaitanya Dharma Maja means we have to engage. It is not by some academic impetus. Not that by the strength of my intellect I can dissect the various scriptures and come to a conclusion solely based on my limited mental faculties. All right? So one has to appreciate that, who is, Prabhupada was such an amazing scholar. But he expressed his devotion to the Lord in such a simple, straightforward manner. Always expressing humility in all of his endeavors. And that, unless it called for, presenting the philosophy to someone who is, envious or like that. But in general, his approach was that, I am simply a servant. I am delivering this message. For those who have the capacity and they can take this message, and it will simply open up their hearts. That's all. Krishna will do the rest. He said, I am constructing these temples only to make devotees. Only to make devotees. To give everyone an opportunity to come in, see the deity, pay their obeisances, and engage in some service. And this way anyone who's sincere gets an out. So when we engage someone after breakfast, say, Prabhu, can you please clean the tables? We're not trying to get someone to clean the tables per se. Yeah, the tables have to be, we're trying to give a person an opportunity to begin his journey on the path to perfection. He's cleaning his heart. Krishna sees that. He says, oh, this person is making some endeavor. And he just, to the extent that we're able to engage persons in that respect, and they appreciate it with gratitude, then they will make advancement. If someone is thinking, oh, this person is making me wash tables just because I had a meal, then they're not going to get the same benefit. But if he thinks, these people are so nice, they're providing such nice foodstuffs, and they're not charging anything. Of course, we do have a suggested donation. But at the same time, we're engaging in those 6 exchanges, even with someone who just walks in the door. They just walked in the door. But yet we're giving them, we're acting on that platform as recommended by Srila Rupa Goswami. And we should always be acting on that platform in every respect, as much as possible. But this exchange, one can express himself in such a way, and another person may not accept it in that way. But what can you do? It doesn't mean that you stop engaging in that way. But at the same time, one time my godbrother, Alankar, you remember Alankar, Archita? One of our godbrothers, early devotee, joined on 2nd Avenue. His apartment used to also double as the Brahmachari ashram, because 2nd Avenue there was nothing, it was a storefront. So Alankar's apartment was on Delancey. And above it's not, none of these landmarks are there anymore, but there was a bagel bakery there. But anyway, so he's when I was coming to the temple, and I was coming for some time. I was enjoying the association, I was enjoying the prasadam, but I had my, so-called life on the outside, I was thinking. And I was trying to, as they say, have my cake and eat it too. And everyone understands that analogy? You can't have your cake, because if you eat your cake, then you don't have it. So that analogy is you can't have your cake and eat it too. One or the other. So he was very nice. He was engaging me. Whatever he would ask, I would do. Wash the pots, wash the floor. I had no problem. But then he said to me, Krishna is giving you so many opportunities, so many invitations. How would you feel if your friend was inviting you, come over to my house, come over to my house, and every time he invited you, you didn't show up? After some time, that friend may stop inviting you, because he sees, you're not really taking the invitation seriously. So that hit me like a thunderbolt. That, I'm taking Krishna for granted. I'm taking this opportunity for granted. I should be more serious. I could understand from the Bhagavad Gita that, yes, Sarvadhamma Pratya Jamai come, but I wasn't ready to surrender. I was thinking I have to give up everything. So yes, you have to give up everything. And so that, many people nowadays they think that, no, I'll keep a little bit of this, I'll keep a little bit of that. I won't give up this, I won't give up that. No, when you see how devotees were able to, after joining in 1 year, Prabhupada would send them to London to open up a center. How did that happen? If I ask anybody here after 1 year, what are you doing? Well, I'm not sure, I'm still trying to learn the Madanga, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. No. Prabhupada just immediately put these people on a plane and sent them out. You go open up this temple. Because they were fully surrendered. They had no material desires. They were ready to sacrifice everything for the mission of the spiritual master. They were following in Prabhupada's footsteps perfectly. Exactly what he did, they were also emulating. So if we want such success, then we have to think, has my surrender been, and where do you compare it to? You can't just say, well, that was a big deal for me to give up my whatever. That's not a big deal. It's a big deal for you. So one has to inquire submissively from the spiritual master that what should I do? The spiritual master would say, just like that was the question put by the disciples of Jesus Christ. What should I do? You should follow me and do what I do. You give up these, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the same thing. Now, what is that? Give up fancy food and fancy clothes. I'm paraphrasing. Same chapter, devotional principles, Majji Lula. Give up fancy food and fancy clothes. But somehow we have some attachment. And it even lingers in the way we dress sometimes as devotees. It has to be just so right like that. But that we have to also be careful of. Is this my ego? Or is this my desire to make a nice presentation for preaching to the VIPs? We shouldn't look like slobs, but at the same time, we should be cautious. That who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for Krishna or am I doing it for me? Am I doing it to attract that nice brahmacharini over on the other side of the temple there? Yeah. So, yes. Hit me like a rock. When are you going to accept Krishna's invitation? And so shortly after that, I realized, yes, I need to surrender. I need to actually surrender, not what I'm thinking. I need to, according to the way that Krishna is engaging all these other devotees, I could see them. They were all perfect examples of surrender and humility and renunciation. And they were ecstatic. So I could see that I'm not going to lose anything, but I had to connect point A and point B. And these devotees are so happy, they're so satisfied, intellectually, spiritually, even, by this amazing foodstuffs that they're getting. So what is there to lose? Nehabhakramanasasti prativayana vidite. No loss, no diminution. But until you open that jar and taste the contents, you'll never know just simply by licking the outside. So you have to fully surrender at some point in order to continue the journey. And then once you surrender, you have to maintain that surrender. You can't just say, okay, now I've joined, I'm initiated, now I can kick back and relax. I've got my certificate, my IDC, ISKCON Disciples Course. I've got my certificate. No, this is not. What's that verse? Prahlad Maharaj says, Matirna Krishna Parataksvatova Bito Bipadyeti Grahavatanam Adantago Bhyavishatam Tamishram Punak Punashchavatar Chava. Not by joint conference, not by some certificate, not by just some, business association. No, it has to come. You have to give up this chewing the chewed. You have to give it all up. Then only Krishna will come in to your life. Yeah. So don't be enamored by the processes that may appear to be related to devotional service, which are meant to attract newcomers or people with a particular proclivity. If you're trying to preach to a professor, you might want to demonstrate your academic intellectual chops with that person just to set the tone that, you're not dealing with some, mushroom, cult member kept in the dark and fed on manure. So you have to, somewhat impress them, or at least give them pause to think. So everything is there for us. However we want to serve Krishna, that's there. But the simplest method is always the best. Even the karmis say that. What do the karmis say? KISS. What does that mean? KISS. Arjuna knows. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. You don't have to make it complicated. Prabhupada said, difficult for the crooked, simple for the simple at heart. So the more you make your heart simple, the more you'll advance in devotional service. So don't make it complicated. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. All these things lead up to Atma Nivedanam. So this is there. And Prabhupada said, he gave that definition, Sarvatmana, full surrender, heart and soul, no reservation. String those words together. You can wear them on your neck. Sarvatmana. Full surrender, heart and soul, no reservation. 1976 Mayapur. So that's our goal. Our goal is not to become a big, big devotee, a big, big orator, a big, big lecturer, big, big anything. It's up to Krishna how he wants to engage you. He may have you like a Nuttama Prabhu meeting the presidents or the vice presidents or the secretaries of state or this, that, the other thing. That's your service. Or like here, we have the mayor who comes in all the time, very nice fellow. He likes us. He's always very respectful. He gives us so much confidence that he'll give us facility. But we're not looking for that. We're not trying to get some exchange. We're just trying to engage him, take prasadam, see the deities. Krishna does everything. If he wants to from within the heart, just like when you're in Sankirtan. When you're from within the heart, the person will give or not give, depending on your sincerity. We're not salesmen. We're simply there performing the Yuga Dharma Sankirtan Yajna. And Krishna, just like we read here a little bit earlier, Vishnu is pleased with his share. All right? Even though he owns everything. But patram pushpam pulam tvai, just a little thing, but offered with love and devotion. Then he accepts it. So this we always have to keep in the forefront of our mind. Is what I'm doing backed by my sincere desire to please the Lord, to love the spiritual master. Because only then can everything else crystallize into this highest platform of, this, what we hear about it and read about in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this intimate relationship with the Supreme Lord that can, who can even consider attaining it from the material platform? But it comes automatically by executing devotional service. It's like a person, he has no material means whatsoever, but somehow or other he finds a lottery ticket on the floor and he wins $1 million. Because that's that principle. All right? John Massimo was quoting yesterday. Sa eva dayabhak tatenu kampam susamikshamaram. We have an inheritance, it's just waiting. The most valuable inheritance. But we have to, we don't want to be in such a situation where we get excluded. In my profession previously, I had to deal with such instances because, one of the many challenges that people have is that when a person leaves, their estate goes into probate and people argue over it. The executor wants to cut this person out of the will. Or the principal, decedent, he cut that person out of the will. And they argue, no, that's a new will. It wasn't signed properly. He wasn't, because the first thing it says in a will, it says, in a sound state of mind, I write these words. So they want me, as an investigator, to go find out whether or not this will was properly endorsed. Because that's it. But we have a promise to Tenu Kampam, that this inheritance is there. Nothing can exclude you except your own foolishness. By giving up the principles. All right, it's there. It's just waiting for you. It's got your name on it. But yes, you can lose that opportunity by foolishness. Right? By taking advantage of the situation, not being serious. So we have a lot to do on Sunday to prepare the temple for these hundreds of guests that will come. So we should try to be conscientious. That's an interesting word. Conscientious means to expand your consciousness. Not just my narrow vision, what I need to serve myself. But how can I please the spiritual master? This is his home. What can I do? So many things. There's dust everywhere. So there's same dust that's on the heart is externally manifest in the temple, just so you can have the opportunity to physically engage in cleansing that dust from the mirror of the heart. There's no other reason for it to be there. We could hire a cleaning company, pay thousands of dollars. No one would have. But then what would happen? The cleaning company would get the benefit. Agyata Sukriti. They would literally get the benefit of cleaning the temple, and you wouldn't. All right? One time Prabhupada commented, there was a devotee taking notes in class. And Prabhupada said, like putting money in someone else's pocket. Because you're not concentrating, you're not listening, you're not focused. Maybe you'll look at him later, maybe not. But the chite te kuriya akya, guru mukha padma vakya chite, it's the words, not how I interpret them. One time in, was it Bhubaneswar? Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and he said, because my disciples are here, I'm going to give it in English. Immediately, some people got up to leave because they don't understand English. Prabhupada told them, no, tell them to sit down. It's the words. It's not whether they understand them or not. It's the words. Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitate Koryakya. So you have to hear these lectures and it will reinforce the concept in your mind. You know, how the words of the spiritual master are, what effect they're having. And you can see it by your ability to maintain steady, fixed, determined, convinced. All right? So that you can execute the mission of the spiritual master. All right? That's enthusiasm. Endeavor, execute it with intelligence. Any questions? Any suggestions how we can clean the temple better? Everybody take 5 minutes out of their day. Go find a cloth and wipe up every service you can find. We had one devotee on Henry Street. He was fanatical in his cleanliness. Fanatical. Any service that someone could touch, he would clean. Every railing, every doorknob, every banister. And I, as a new devotee, I'm following him around, and I can understand this person. He's fully focused, but to me, even that was like, that's a little much. But that's okay. I understood his mood was to make everything perfect for the Sunday feast guests. And the temple in Henry Street was spotless. Spotless. Everything was cleaned. Every day, practically, but then also extra cleaning. Every stair in the whole building, every railing, every doorknob, every surface that could be cleaned was cleaned. That's just the way it was. Now with a mop, with a bucket and a rag. No mops. There were no mops. Only buckets and rags. That's how Prabhupada taught us. No mops. So imagine cleaning this nice building with just a bucket and a rag. Everybody take a bucket and everybody clean one floor. And then clean the staircase. And then clean the railings. And then clean the banisters. Okay? Then we'll be coming up to the standard that we had previously. Right now we're just trying to get there. And that's okay. Nehaba krama naso sti. No loss or diminution. Yeah? We're advancing. We're not going backwards yet. Don't let us go backwards. Any questions, comments, corrections? John Master Prabhu?
Hamsarūpa Prabhu was bringing up the Tate Nukampam Sukshamikshamana verse, which is 10:14:8. And Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 6, in the second heading, Expecting the Lord's Mercy, Prabhupada said this should be the guide for all devotees. And so it's a super important verse. And someone that actually understands it and follows it is able to stay steady through thick and thin, through all kinds of challenges. If one doesn't understand it, usually they have big problems. And that was my comment. I have one quick question. Maybe you want to comment on my comment, but the question I had is that you were talking about how these devotees, were sent out at a really early age in devotional service to open temples, and that was an amazing phenomenon. But then, another point that comes to my mind when you brought that up is that some devotees that did an enormous amount of service, they didn't stay with it. Over the years, we saw many cases like this. It doesn't happen like that so much now, with like sannyasis, etc. A little awkward question, but I think it's important for us to understand.
I don't know. Prabhupada gave us an answer. He said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. Because there's, just like there's Shakti-Avesh avatars. So Prabhupada empowered people to do certain things at certain times. And that was like in a war, on a battlefield, you get what's called a battlefield commission. You're a sergeant, but they killed the lieutenant, so now you're the lieutenant. But when the battle's over and you go back to the garrison, to the barracks, you're demoted. You're not demoted. You were really never a lieutenant. A battlefield commission is not permanent. Unless they make it permanent. Krishna can make it permanent. Otherwise, you'll go back to being a sergeant. And so he's a sergeant again, and that's, he may not be as empowered. He can no longer execute the way he was when he was a lieutenant. So there's some consideration in that respect that he, and so it's not that Prabhupada took away his empowerment, but that he may not feel it in the same way any longer. And that leads to, what's that, Bhagavad Gita? I'd have to look it up. But Prabhupada quotes his verse more than any other verse and reads, lectures on 7.1. Maya Sakta Manapata, what's that now? Asang Sayam Samagramam. Free from doubt. Asang Sayam Samagramam. So if that battlefield commission didn't put them in that position where they were free from doubt, then again the doubt is there. And that's eventually what leads to our downfall. We lose faith. And how do you lose faith? Because your doubts overwhelm your confidence and your faith. So, any other? We can continue that question other places, but that's what I've seen. Any other questions, comments, corrections? And it's time to Mahaprasadam Govinde. And then to go about our day and serve the guests. And by serving the guests, we're watering the root of the tree. All of New York gets benefited. Because if someone goes away, the rule of customer service, that if one person, it's very distracting to have the red eye flash. So that's why you don't do these things. You have to shut the flash off or shut off what's called red eye. The red eye. And if you need instructions from a professional, there he is right there. Because obviously you don't have that down yet. So and even I know what the red eye function is. So there's, and it's not a flight early in the morning. But so we're watering the root of the tree. One person gets a good experience. He tells 10 other people a good thing. And if he gets a bad experience, he tells 100 people, don't go to this place. So we want to give everyone a good experience. We have a chance, if there's 400 people, that's 4,000 people who will hear about how nice the Sunday feast was. Or 40,000 people who hear how bad it was. We don't want that. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Dhruva Maharaj ki jai.